Hello and welcome to Label Sessions Presents, the podcast where we talk to the most interesting people about all the things you need to know in the worlds of innovation, business, design, tech, and culture. I'm Fuzlin, Esau, all the way down here in Cape Town. And today we're joined by new label mate Katy Trost, as well as Sherrard and Josh Nixon from the Label Sessions team. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
So a big warm welcome to Katy Trost, who is just joining the label. She's part coach, part operator, part strategic partner. Katy's a trusted advisor to scale-up CEOs navigating their growth journey between Series B and exit. To kick us off, some people are saying that we're back in the infinite workday mentality. Hustle culture seems to be back. People are working around the clock. This week, Glamour magazine ran an article saying more and more professionals are working all hours to pay the bills. Others are arguing that workers are unproductive and hard to motivate. With sort of the rise of the global workforce, how should we as leaders right now be thinking about hours and the hours that our teams put in? Katy, what are your thoughts?
So I would split this into two categories personally. And one of them is we have the CEO and the exec team. And those guys, they are just on the height of their career, like the peak of their career, right? And so it's okay if you have a little bit of an infinite workday. Sometimes they come to me and they're like, oh, I don't have the work-life balance. And sometimes you shouldn't try to get that because it's just not possible, right? You just raised $100 million. You probably want to be working on a Saturday. You probably want to make, at the same time, I always say have a half day where you just don't do anything. And I mean, no family, kids, wife, just spend the time with yourself. It's more of a reset, but it's a productive reset. And if you don't have that, it feels like this never-ending rat race. But that being said, I don't believe that somebody who is, on that 3 to 5, 6 year journey into an exit is going to have a lot of opportunity to have very, healthy work-life balance. Same for executives, right? You get a bunch of options and you're just like, okay, I'm now going to grind for the next 5, 6 years. Then we have the other bucket, and that's the workforce, like generally. And I think just over the past 5 years, looking at prices, housing prices, grocery prices, travel, everything just doubled. And not like 20% or something. I used to live in New York, now going back, the same apartment I rented for, I think it was, whatever, 4,500 or something. Now all of a sudden it's easily $8,000, right? We're talking about a 2-bedroom apartment. So it's almost like we're trying to make something work where the math is just not mathing. And I think that's why people are like on their, second job and they can't take the holidays, or they need to start another side business or whatever it is, right? And that's, I think, where this infinite workday is coming from as well, where people just feel like they can never keep up and there is nothing to be saved. And that's really demotivating. And, we can put all of the learning lunches and yoga classes to the organization if people don't spend time with their loved ones. And again, they're not at the height of their career. They're not, they're not going to walk away with that $10 million check after 5 years. So it's incredibly demotivating, I think. So as leaders, and especially as a CEO, I think it's important to honor that as well, and especially have the after work hours. Again, executive team is different, completely different bucket here, but not have that expectation of, okay, after your dinner, you're going to sit down again for an hour and a half and go through emails, right? And that's where, again, AI can be quite helpful, right? To take up these tasks that can be automated, and the tactical stuff that's just doesn't require a lot of thinking time. But I'm not sure there's an answer to this, honestly, because I think it's just looking at it from the outside, right? The math is not adding up. And so people just keep working, and they don't have the opportunity to necessarily advance financially, and therefore they just feel like I'm on this too weak a year holiday, and I'm supposed to recover from that, and I'm probably going to be with my kids somewhere, so it's not really a holiday.
Yeah. Also, that point you make about the kind of yoga and stuff is kind of interesting, because I think there's a lot of leaders we speak to who we're working with who are quite well intentioned, but I guess getting their head around that kind of economic shift we talked about, which is in the big cities. It used to be, I think there's lots of CEOs in corporate America, corporate UK. They're used to the idea that they pay the people in marketing or the people in the tech team kind of quite a good salary.
Yeah.
They kind of had quite a good culture. And they're struggling with them being demotivated, but they're actually partly demotivated, to your point, around the fact that the economics have shifted. Actually, if you want to live in London, LA, New York, these kind of big urban centers, the kind of corporate salary isn't necessarily buying you the lifestyle it used to buy you outside of work. And that's actually quite a fundamental challenge in terms of like the business culture for people to get their head around. I think it does change lots of things.
And COVID has changed our perspective on it, right? When people had their remote work opportunities and all of a sudden they were like, wow, this is what life can feel like. And then they go back to the office and to this, commuter life and early starts, and then no time with the family after dinner, after the end of the day, and no time for friends as well, right? It's just not very balanced.
No, exactly.
But if things were a little bit more affordable, where the salaries would be a little bit, more reasonable. And that's why I think AI makes a lot of sense here. It can have very senior heavy teams where instead of having a sales leader managing 50 people, all of a sudden it's only 10 people. And so you can pay those people much, much better. And I think that's where the real shift happens. Now that obviously brings a lot of other problems with unemployment and so on. But just from the people who are employed in, let's say, the tech companies and the, more of the modern, not like manufacturing or automotive or whatever it is, and office jobs, I think just paying them more, even
so
if
it could be smaller, more high functioning teams could be part of the answer. Although I think there's also like an interesting thing here as well, as when you read through some of the articles about the infinite workday, how much is genuinely infinite work versus like infinite communication. I think that's also one of the things remote teams people haven't quite got their head around, which is it's one thing if you've got teams that are working really long hours doing stuff. But I think there's just an interesting concept around actually what's happening a lot is people working asynchronously and then kind of half-assedly kind of communicating, whether it's like Slack messages or email culture or all those kind of things. That's kind of creating this really stressful smog of communication for people. But actually, they're not actually doing very much. It's actually just a kind of stress machine.
Yeah. And then as a CEO, you only see the output and you're like, this is just not good enough. Why are people complaining? But it's a lot of volume, but low quality.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on a few things that actually matter. And when you think about it, like in the office, I mean, sometimes I go into my clients' offices and you see people working and I don't know, they're so productive. It's just 3 meetings and, we had this one session. It's like, okay, you could have literally done this in 90 minutes. Yeah. But people stretch it. So, yeah, I think higher functioning teams, I really like the whole Netflix culture mindset. Obviously, it's a little bit extreme, but going more into that direction, you can operate without a lot of rules if you have the right people and if it's fewer people. And especially if all of those people are motivated by, this is, a very important chapter in my career, you don't need to motivate them that much. If they're well paid, they're not going to leave because they're well paid, and they will organize their time in the way that they want to organize it. So if we can have the majority of people in a company think more like an executive from how they spend their time and the whole, output and outcome, and just aligning that as much as possible and not having a lot of output and no outcome, then I think companies can be just so much more productive. But it's hard, easier said than done, isn't it? In the theory.
So everything's all good in theory, and then you sort of get into it, and it's like, oh wait,